Hey guys, Jeff Francoeur here. Thanks for listening to our content, and please like and subscribe. Before we get to the podcast, if you have middle school or high school kids that play sports and you don't want to fundraise like me, we got you covered. My buddy Chris Carneal owns Booster. Chris?
We help schools and sports teams raise funds in a super fun and engaging way. In fact, the last 22 years, we've raised $750 million, and we can't wait to help you. Choose booster.com.
Back here with Pure Athlete with Jeff and Britt and Brad. And guys, today we are going to talk a little bit about the toxic side of youth sports. But before we get into that, I got to ask you, how is summer going for you guys?
Brad?
How's your tan coming?
Not good. Not good. It's either white or burn, you know how I go. But no, it's been great. Love school being out. It just, everybody can exhale a little bit. You're not rushing every morning to get ready. It's been really nice. But yeah, looking forward to coming up on the All-Star break. Yeah, see if the Braves can make a little push here before mid-season mark. What do you think?
What do you think, Jeff?
I continue to say, as long as their starting pitching is healthy, I'm good. Because I think that'll be the thing. Look, I think they'll get a person at the All-Star break. I think what is interesting is now that you have the extra wild card team, there's so many teams that are like 2 or 3 games out. Yeah. And like even the Mets, and like if you're up there, how are you telling?
Yeah, not many people selling.
Fans say we're selling, we're doing this. So there's some tough decisions that some of these teams will have, and I think it's kind of what baseball wanted.
Yeah.
So that's good. You got Wimbledon starting, one of my favorites. I love the U.S. Open and the fact that, of course, the New Yorkers are just screaming at the people and the guys, be quiet all the time. But Wimbledon's like the Masters, right?
Yes,
like it's just a tradition.
It's iconic.
It's always great. You got the NBA draft coming up.
It's good stuff. I can't believe
our hometown Hawks will have the first pick, so we'll see what happens.
Well, of course, they have the first pick in the worst draft in the last 20 years.
Yeah, is that amazing?
It always happens that way. It's unbelievable.
It's brutal. It's brutal. Hey, I do have to go back to baseball for a second and ask, it feels like there's more injuries this year. It certainly feels like there's more injuries to higher profile players. Mookie just got,
I think that's the thing. I think you're seeing some maybe more of the high profile guys this year, but I'm sure there's going to be a study out or something. But it is interesting. We know about all the arm injuries and everything, but they're starting to pile up the position players. Yeah. And I think that's an interesting discussion.
Yeah. Yeah. You think guys are getting hit by pitches more with the velocity? And
think about it. The harder you throw, the younger these guys come up, the less accuracy they're going to have. And that's part of the game, right?
Yeah.
Like I still go back and think, I can't remember the exact number, but Chipper Jones has only hit like 28, 29 times in his career. You got guys getting hit 20 times a year now.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So it is, but you got guys coming up with 80 innings in the minor leagues and all of a sudden pitching in the big leagues. A, they're scared to get smoked, to get hit, and B, so, they're just throwing as hard as they can, the ball's moving.
Who are you most uncomfortable with standing at the plate?
Well, Carlos Zambrano, because I always didn't know if he was going to snap and try to take my head off.
Yeah.
I always told you, he was one of those guys even when he was in the outfield shagging during BP with the Cubs, I'd be like, hey, Carlos. I was super nice to him. Hey, start a ball for me. You're my favorite player. Yeah. Just because when I was hitting, I didn't want him to throw and take my head off.
Yeah.
Reverse psychology.
He was a wild card.
Yeah, you didn't know what was coming from him.
Tell you one thing, it'll be over by the time this drops, but College World Series has been amazing so far.
Yeah.
I mean, like so many, every game's been a walk-off, and Omaha, been there. I went there a couple years ago, and it was kind of a bucket list thing. And man, it's an unbelievable experience. They embrace that whole event.
It's amazing. The Women's College World Series and the Men's College World Series in the last 4 or 5 years has just grown. Yeah. I mean, it has. It's unbelievable. Now, the only thing I think both those things need to do is put a retractable roof on.
Yeah, well.
I mean, not even just a sliding one.
Yeah.
Like in Seattle, how they have the sliding one still open air.
Yeah.
I mean, you're there 12 days in the Midwest. You are going to get rain, tornadoes. Yeah. Like, it is what it is.
Yeah. I mean, what's crazy
Softball's easier because the games are quick, right? All right, so what are we getting, the toxic side of youth sports?
Yeah, let's talk about that, because there, as we know, are several toxic elements in youth sports. A lot of great stuff in youth sports, but we just thought today we'd talk a little bit about some of those aspects that we all wrestle with, and we're going to break it down, and we're going to talk a little bit about parents, and we're going to talk about toxic coaches, and we're going to talk about toxic teammates and competitors and players. So let's jump in and talk a little bit about toxic parents to start off with. What you're in the mix right now.
Oh.
What do you see?
Well, every parent thinks they got all the answers. I know that. And I've told you as a coach, I tell my parents all the time, talk to me. If you got something, call me, let me know how I can help, things I can do better. Because same thing in this podcast, we don't know everything. We want feedback. We want to hear, maybe we get an idea. They're like, hey, I actually like the way they're thinking about this. But I think the number one thing that bugs me with parents, and I know what yours is, I can go ahead and tell you, is coaching from the sidelines or yelling at your kids.
We'll put that on the shelf.
Anything.
I may pivot a little bit. I may come back and
I think is just the way they yell at officiating, umpires, especially at the youth level, young, like these people are making $40 an hour, $40 a game. A lot of these, it's not their main job. They're doing it because they enjoy doing it.
At the T-ball level and the coach pitch level, you've got high school kids umping these games.
Absolutely.
I mean, we have some kids from our program that make money umping, at T-ball and in the lower levels, and these parents are screaming at a 16-year-old kid.
Man, that's
the kid has no. He doesn't have a bet on the game. He's just trying to make a couple bucks. He may miss a call. I mean, golly, it's crazy.
And I'm with you. And the whole thing is you. I'm sure you've just gotten out of it with Brady and stuff, but they're having trouble getting umpires.
Oh yeah.
At the officiating. And I know basketball. I've heard from numerous people talk about AAU, how they're scuffling to get people to want to ref because they're just taking abuse.
Well, and they don't feel safe. We were prepping for this show, and we found a survey of a bunch of youth umpires, and 70% of them said they don't feel safe anymore.
They should.
And they should feel that way when you see everything going on right now, and parents are out of control. Now, not all of them, but you only need a few.
Let me tell you, the only time you'll ever see me get on an umpire, and I mean this with all, is if they act like they just don't care and they don't want to be there. Then I'm not going to abuse them, right? But I'm going to be like, hey, be better. Or come on, lock in, let's care.
Yeah.
Not that if you miss a call or if you miss a strike call, like I said, think about it. You watch a Major League Baseball game. The best that do it, they do it full time. They're missing calls all the time. So now you expect a 16-year-old kid, doing a T-ball game?
And unless you think they've got some bias, which I promise you, I would say 99.9% don't have a bias, it's a mistake.
Let me tell you. They want the game to be over as quick as possible. Yeah. They don't get paid by the hour. They get paid by the game.
Yeah.
And they're not going to be great. They're going to miss a lot of stuff. So I know it's easy to sit on the outside and say all this. We've all been in the battles ourselves and been frustrated at times. But come on, folks. I think give it a rest.
Give it a rest. That's one. I think another thing, parents, is when you're watching your kid act out there, start to have an attitude, do this, and you do nothing about it. Like, don't leave it up to the coach to have to do it, because that's a tough situation for a coach, because it's like, man, if I go in on this young girl or boy, like, how do I be perceived? Like, as a parent, take it over from the coach of saying, you're out.
I got this.
Don't worry, coach. I'm doing what so you don't have to.
Yeah. I mean, you have an expectation for your kid and how they carry themselves, regardless of what happens in their environment. They may get a bad call. They may strike out. They may get a foul that may be questionable, or they may get a non-foul. Look, you still have to carry yourself a certain way. And what we say is we want you at our schools, like, you want to glorify God in how you behave And that doesn't mean you're always going to get the right calls. It doesn't mean you're always going to get the right breaks, but you got to carry yourself in a way that glorifies God. And as a parent, that's what you should expect your kids. Not to be perfect, but do their very best. And you own that as a parent. Look, that's not the coach's job. Yes, you want their help, but you have to own that as a parent. You take care of that. You nip it in the bud when it happens.
Yeah, let's double down on that again. We had a sportsmanship episode, And if you haven't heard it, you should go back and listen. But the number one thing that comes out of that episode is sportsmanship should be owned by the parents. Coaches have a role, but parents, you have to teach sportsmanship to your kids. And if they're not showing it, you have to step in.
Yeah, I'm with you. And that just the coach got enough to worry about. And like I said, then they start worrying, well, if I go after, is the parent going to get on me for going after their kid?
Right, sure.
Honestly, that's what people have to deal with. So I agree, parents own that. So parents, I think another thing, have a realistic expectation of your kids' talent.
Yeah.
How good they are, where they are in the food chain. And at that moment, again, we keep saying, doesn't mean that's where they're going to end. They can continue to work their way, get better, and become one of the best players. But at the same time, if your kid's batting eighth, okay, don't tell your kid he should be batting third or she should be batting third.
Yeah.
If they're the eighth person on the bench in basketball, don't tell them they should be getting 25% of the shots, because then all you're doing is you're setting up your kids to fail. Their expectations all of a sudden go through the roof. Now, this doesn't mean don't push your kid.
Yeah.
Don't get them better, but also don't give them unrealistic expectations where they go out there and now they feel like a disappointment. Because to me, that's when kids don't want to play anymore, right? When they feel like, I haven't met my parents' standards, I'm not good.
Yeah.
Well, your parents have made you think that you should be this, and you're not.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's huge.
I think it goes back to you're talking about as a parent not having an agenda for your kid's journey. Like your kid's journey, you have no idea where they're going to end up, especially at 11 years old, especially at 10 years old. And to sit there and go, this is the track. For them to get a scholarship or for them to make their high school team, they've got to be on this track. You have no idea what that track. You have no idea where those tracks are going. You have no idea how good your kid's going to be. You have no idea if your kid's going to still love that sport. And so you've got to be in the moment at that game. And what is the goal for that game? And the goal for that game needs that they need to have a blast. They need to be a great teammate. They need to give 100% effort.
Yep.
They need to compete. But it's not, they got to go 4 for 4 because if they go 4 for 4, I know this travel team is going to want them.
Exactly.
Or if they, if they're batting eighth, like you said, I always told my kid, hey, if they got you eighth, just enjoy it. I'd rather be hitting 3 for 4, batting eighth than going 0 for 4 and the third spot, man. And everybody's mad at you. Because it's going to work itself out. When you get to a certain point where the games matter, they're going to put the guy with the best average in the 3 and 4 spot.
I'm with you on that. Funny story. So, I coach daughter's softball team. You have 3 pool play games. We played this team that was new to the tournament. There's 4 levels, and we're kind of in that 2.5, 3 level. And this team, their first 2 pool play games, got beat 15-0 and 22-2. So we go to meet for the 3rd game. We're about to play this team. The coach is like, "Whew, what a rough day for our girls." You got any advice? And he even called me Frenchie, even though I never met the guy. He's like, "You got advice, Frenchie?" And I was like, "Yeah, playing a different tournament."
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Your girls are probably not having fun, yet there's other levels where they can compete and do that, and that's great. But don't do unrealistic expectations for these kids, because then they're not going to want to play. They're going to want to quit.
Yeah.
No kid can have fun just getting pounded day after day after day. And so that goes back to Mark DeRosa's, where I always love, there's a team, there's a league for every girl or boy out there. Just find it.
Yeah. And look, if you don't know the sport well enough to know if your kid is good or if they have, realistic aspirations of being something, then find somebody who'll be honest with you and ask them.
Yep.
But don't overemphasize.
All right. Before we move on,
we got to talk about coaching from the stands.
I'm going to give you 30 seconds to go about coaching from the stands, and then we'll move on.
I think that I've matured in my view a little bit. I think there are moments that you can encourage your kid from the stands. I think that you can say great job, but I don't think you should be giving your kid technical coaching advice, whatever the sport is, from the stands. That is just, it's not the time. It's like I always said, when I'm on the tee box, I don't want anybody telling me, give me instruction by the swing.
Can I play devil's advocate and ask you one question?
Go ahead.
What about at 7 or 8 years old? Because no offense, a lot of those coaches might not know.
I think that it's still at that point, they're not facing a kid with a great slider. It's really hand-eye coordination. You've already, they've already spent time, practicing. They've already spent time hopefully working on all that fundamental stuff. When you get them in the game, they get 2 or 3 at bats, swing as hard as you can, and run it out.
Right.
So
I feel like Brad's coming over a little
he's
bit.
moving. We'll ask again in a month.
Hey, we're wearing them down on this.
So in T-ball, when the kid hits the
I may
ball,
pull back. If y'all keep rubbing it in, I may go back and double down on
the
it.
kid hits
Nothing.
the ball
Don't say
and stands
anything.
there. You no telling him to run.
All right, so we're going to move on to toxic coaches. One thing I'll just say right off the bat with toxic coaches, and this cracks me up, and I don't know if if Brady played on a team that did this, in any sport, because I've heard it in soccer a lot. I've heard where they have these people sign contracts. What are you signing a contract for a team?
Yeah.
Like, are you not letting this go? Nope, you can't go play on another team.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's just kind of weird. Like, I've always kind of said it, like, if you don't want to play on the team, go play on another team.
Well, sometimes the contracts are about behavior. About making sure you're at practice or something like that.
That's fine, but like instead of a contract, just give it. like people make you
expectations.
Yeah, the kids
yeah.
sign a
Yeah,
contract.
well, look, we at our live event, we read a letter from a coach.
Oh yeah,
And a coach in a league you play in.
absolutely.
And in 10-year-old softball, and he referenced a contract that everybody had signed.
Yeah, and so that's why I'm like, part of me is like, if a coach asks me to sign up for my kid, I'm going up to him like, look, let me read all the rules I'm getting it. Like, I'm excited to play on this team. And the moment we're not excited and don't want to, don't worry, we're gone.
Yeah.
Like that's my whole thing. What if this girl decides to go play on another team? Is that coach like, you can't do that?
Yeah.
What are you going to take them to court over a 10-year contract for softball?
Small claims court.
But you know what? This is my advice to that. Just coach your team.
Yeah.
So, give us some. I'll go with Britt here because Jeff seems a little bit emotional right now. Give us some things that if you notice about a coach that makes you want to sit there and go, hey, I may want to press pause in this situation. Like, what are some traits of a toxic coach that you would see in any sport that would make you go, I'm not sure? That's part one. Part two would be, when is it okay to pull your kid off a team?
Well, I mean, the obvious one is abuse, whether it be verbal or, certainly physical. Yeah, they're gone.
Don't even need to think about it.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm with you.
And well, look, verbal abuse is, as kids get older, we're not saying that coaches can't be tough on kids. Different sports, lend themselves to different amounts of toughness from a verbal standpoint. But man, especially at young ages, coaches making kids cry all the time. And I mean, I experienced that as a kid playing football, and it made me not want to play. Coach made everybody on the team cry, and here I'm, 50 years later, and I still remember it very well.
I can tell.
Oklahoma Joe.
I'm about
emotional.
Give me a moment. But we don't want that for kids. Favoritism, I think, is big time.
I was about to hit that, man. If you see too much favoritism, go run as far and as fast as you possibly can. Because if you see it early on, it's not going to change. And if push comes to shove, remember this, I told you, it's the only time my dad ever pulled me from a team when I was 12 years old. When I was the second probably best player on the team, and I was hitting 9th or 10th because all these other coaches' kids. And my dad made us stick with it for a while, and then finally it reached its point where my dad's like, we're out of here.
Yeah.
And he pulled from it. I wanted to stay.
Yeah.
He said, no, we're gone.
Yeah.
And so I think that's another one. I think if you see too much of the daddy ball, playing your kid all the time, run as far and as fast as you can.
My kid plays shortstop and bats first every time.
Yeah, exactly.
And everybody knows he should.
First of all, your kid can't catch a ground ball.
Right.
And he can't throw it to first, and your kid hasn't got a hit all year.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's...
What about you, Brad?
I would say, look, and we're Americans. We love to win. I would say if it's a win at all costs coach, and until they even, again, I say until they get to high school, it's about development. The coach should, the number one thing I wanted from a coach was that my kid would develop, and then the second thing would be that they want to play the next year.
Yeah.
And I remember, it's you talk about football, and my dad was a football coach, and so I played football from the time I was 5 years old and never played touch football, always played tackle football. And I remember those years where my position coach was a great guy. And was such, I mean, was someone that would like encourage me, motivated me, like, and when I made a good play would, congratulate me. I wanted to play for that guy so bad and loved it. But I also remember years that the coaches were toxic, and back in the day, there wasn't a lot of vetting out of coaches, and it made me hate playing that sport. And it could be any sport. And so I would just say.
And back then, too, if you think about it, people couldn't just move to other places and play like you can today.
I mean, there was.
What I'm saying? You were stuck.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. And so I just think that I go back to just, man, coaching is, to me, to be called coach is such an honorable title, but it carries with it so much responsibility. And I think that, man, you can affect kids' lives in such a positive way, in such a negative way. And I would just I want that coach to just I want my kid to come back and just say, I love this year. I can't wait to play lacrosse again next year. I can't wait to play football again next year, because that's really that coach has so much to do with it.
And I think one thing too, that I think as you have an issue with a coach, with whatever, if the kid's starting to understand and they're old enough, I think for she or him to go talk to the coach themselves, I think shows a lot of maturity. And I think I remember my dad made me do that a couple of times. Now, if nothing changes after that and it continues, then again, now it's your turn as a parent to step in and say, I got to take this.
What age do you think a kid is old enough to be able to kind of own that a little bit? Where you
10.
say,
I think it's about 10. Like, I could see girls on my softball team easily coming up to me and having a very coach, I don't think you're doing, or I think that's about the age. 7, 8, I don't think they comprehend yet.
Mm-hmm. The tough thing is if you've got a coach, especially if they're big and they're loud and they're toxic, man, the communication breaks down immediately because the kids are scared to death of them.
Yeah,
absolutely. But I think that's if you can.
I think you
are
should,
scared, but I think as a parent, if you can push your kid.
No. I think you got to give it. You got to try.
Uncomfortable, but them realize that there's going to be confrontation and different things as you continue to grow. That's what my dad wanted more than anything. He's like, I want you to get over your nerves of going to talk to the coach.
10 is tough, man.
Well, maybe 12 then. Yeah. All right.
I think you're using
as they get older.
Yeah, and you're using your girls and you as an example.
And we're very mature.
Well, but you've given an air of approachability to your girls, and we're talking about toxic coaches. Mm-hmm. That's tough for a 10-year-old.
Yeah. So maybe as you get towards more middle school, mid-middle school, going to high school, but I think for the kid to go in and talk to the coach, I think that shows a lot.
Yeah. I love, flip it around. And I think you've talked about this, Brad, as an AD, that y'all have had a rule at your school that if the parents come in and talking to the coach about something, the kid has to be there.
Yeah, because communication is teenagers are just horrible at communication.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times when the coach would have a conversation with the kid, which you love, the kid taking that, a lot of times when the kid would come back and relate it to the parent.
It's completely different.
Yeah, and the coach was like, that's not at all what I said. I didn't say that at all. And so having
Coach said I stunk and I'm never going to play. I said you need to improve.
Yeah, I mean, having both of them there, it just cuts down on that, on any kind of miscommunication.
All right, what about a toxic teammate? Y'all's kids have been this a long time. Surely they played with girls or guys that they could not stand.
Oh yeah, or a competitor. My kids.
Competitor's a little easier for me because it's like get the bow out, put them on the ground, and win the game.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, I think, you play with kids who are selfish, who are ball hogs or who call people out, when they aren't good because they've seen it, they trash talk, all those types of things. We've talked a lot about disrespecting your teammates, disrespecting your opponents, all those kinds of things. It just makes for a toxic situation, but you've got to teach your kid how to deal with that.
So that's what I'm saying. How do you deal with it?
I think that I've seen this up close. I think that it's crazy. And at our school, I think we have great coaches, but coaches can't, there's so many things they miss. Like you would think a coach would be able to identify a toxic team, or what's causing the toxicity on the team, but they miss a lot, even if they're great coaches. Yeah. And so it's up to, I tell my kids, it's up to the teammates to take care of it.
Police themselves.
And the culture nowadays is these kids don't like confrontation. It's hard to get kids to call out their friends, or call out their teammates these days, and in a healthy, positive way, and take care of the situation. Like coaches say, the greatest teams they have are where the leaders are policing
take care
themselves.
of everything.
And I think that maybe it's just insecurity, maybe it's the age, maybe it's the culture, but it's so hard to sit there and go, man, you're a leader, you're one of the best players. You go take care of that situation. No, don't go beat them up, but you let them make sure they understand that this is not
slam them up against the locker.
It's not going to happen. I mean, you don't hurt them,
you.
but you sit there and you got to take care of this. And man, it's a tough thing for them to do. And it's because I think kids,
they want to be liked.
Yeah, exactly.
100%. They want to be accepted, and I think that's part of what we talk about in parents. Is I think those are great conversations to have with your kids, to work through, to help them understand what are your best options, what are,
Well, I think that translates to life and for kids. And, we're in this era of talking about bullying all the time, and that happens on the sports field. Even if it's not happening to you, I mean, this is what you want to teach your kids. If you see it happening to one of your teammates, then you need to step up and you need to take their side. And I think, that's just something kids need to look out for each other.
I remember this story, sorry, because, I talk about my dad all the time on here, but in 4th grade, I had buck teeth and I was getting called Bucktooth Billy all the time on the playground, okay? God honest truth.
That's brutal, Bucktooth Billy.
By a 5th grader on the four squares, and I came home crying. My dad told me 3 different times, tell him to stop.
Yeah.
Tell the teacher told him to stop, didn't, so he can't do it. So finally one day I come home, my mom wasn't around, and my dad said, tomorrow if he calls you that, you punch him right in the nose. So we're out on the 4-square court, 4th grader playing with all the 5th grade. He calls me Bucktooth Billy, dude. I jacked his nose, starts bleeding down the thing. Teacher, the principal's office, the whole deal. They call my mom and dad. My dad, was working the DeKalb County school system. And here's my dad in the school system, one of the high ups. Yeah. And he came and picked me up, and the principal was, I can't believe you did that. And my dad said, son, I'm very proud of you, and got me and walked out. And I remember thinking, my dad is awesome. Not telling you that's how you deal with it, but I know this. I didn't get messed with on the playground.
Yeah, I bet he didn't say that anymore.
But I also, kind of my point to that story is we worked through that for like a month or 2 with my dad, with my parents. Honestly, we tried everything.
You tried diplomacy.
We tried everything. I'm not saying that's how to handle that situation, but I always appreciate it because now that my daughter's going into 5th grade, and girls are mean to her at school, I want her to feel like she can talk about it, and let's figure out the best way. Doesn't mean you're not going to get your feelings hurt the next day and come home crying again. But I think communication is so important. I think the more that kids, like you said, the more they can learn that early on, how to talk things out, how to deal with confrontation like that, I think when they do get to that level, it's a lot easier because we as adults still don't like to deal with that sometimes.
I'm telling you though, it's crazy, and you guys know this, but one toxic teammate, leaders can be, a leader just needs to be somebody who's following them, right? But so you can be a bad leader too. One toxic teammate can kill a team.
Remember Tony Dungy, he said, we're talking about it because he was like, I want great teammates. And he said, look, great teammates cannot win you a Super Bowl. But if you remember, he said in a way, toxic teammate can kill a Super Bowl's chances. And I thought that was cool.
Yeah, I love that. There's a lot more to unpack there. But I think, at the end of the day, we want to teach our kids how to stand up for themselves. And there's all kind of ways to do that. In your case, it was punching the guy in the nose, but there's all kind of ways to do that.
Called Bucktooth Billy since, Brett.
I'm not calling you that.
I'm really, I know that we were talking about that earlier, but I won't say anything now because I don't want to get punched in the nose.
That's a great story.
Oh, God. So finishing up here, though, I want to talk about one thing that I know Britt, we talked about the other day was kind of toxic trends and different things in sports. But my thing would, the ability in the summer to be able to reset your family, to have somewhat of a break. I feel like you go all school year, get towards the end of school, you know this, especially with moms and parties and finishing this. And it's like families go straight in the summer and you do not stop. And so like, what does that look like? There's gotta be some ability to let your kids enjoy summer and you as a family.
So my question would be, is there an off season in youth sports? when is the off season? And you have to decide as a family, and because you're always going to feel, as a parent, you're always going to feel, we should be up at the field. Maybe
We're missing this.
Yeah, we should be at the field. He should be taking shots on goal. And when should you just sit there and say, man, just be a kid?
Yeah, I'm just going to say, is the oldest guy here. I look back now and say, and we played a sport that was year round. If we took a month off in the summer, looking back, it wouldn't have made a hill of beans worth of difference in where they wound up. Except, they might have been fresher and might have wanted it more because they had more break time. So I think, when you get back into school, everything ramps up. There's school stuff. There's, work stuff for parents ramp back up. It's just a higher pace, and kids have to keep up, and you're going boom, 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 boom. The summer is the only time where there's true break time, but you just don't feel it with more and more and more sports.
Yeah, and I tell, especially if you think about it, Georgia is one of 4 states, I think, that does softball in the fall. Mm-hmm. So a lot of these parents that want these girls to play through the end of July, I'm like, there's no break. You go straight in to softball. So I'm like, take July off, rest, relax. Like, if you want to take the ball to the beach and throw go for it. I would do that. Me and my dad, even on vacation, when we went sometimes for like 10 days to the beach, we'd take my bat and balls, and we'd spend maybe twice and go to the cage for 45 minutes. You want to do that? Great. But like, get away and unwind.
I mean, I think, it's hard to say summer because certain sports are heavier in the summer. I mean, once you get older, there's a ton of AAU, there's a ton of that you're going to have to play in some of those, and you're going to have to. So just whenever it is, it may be Christmas time, it may be fall, based on if your kid's sport, if it's the off season of that, of fall or winter or whatever, that's when you got to let them kind of just recalibrate, reset. Just be a kid, because they're going to be excited about when that season starts. Or, like we talk about, maybe if they're a kid who has to be active and needs to be active, let them play a different sport. Yeah. Let them do something. Let them learn an instrument. Let them learn the piano. Yeah, just something completely different that that's going to help them. But it's not going to end well if they're doing that sport year round.
They're just going to burn out.
Yeah.
I mean, the stats are there. So, I know sports, AU, whatever, they go year round, but you've got to find some time to carve out.
Well, and it's so funny because, we read different things that parents send in, right? And I said that one quote a while back about, if you miss one little thing at 10 years old or whatever, and some people wrote, or let your kids, I think this was one, let your kids play multiple sports too. And I saw one comment, well, what about my kid? At 8 years old, they quit whatever, and they just wrestled. And now they're on the varsity team, winning state championships, doing this. And my response to be awesome.
Yeah.
But majority of kids don't end up the way. And I think that's the thing you try to tell them. There's always outliers. I've said that. There's the Bryce Harpers. As my dad said, at the end of the day, I probably could have took you to the batting cage every day from 10 to 18, and you still would have loved it. Mm-hmm. I was just obsessed with it. Yeah. But there's outliers to it. Majority of kids are going to end up quitting. We talk about it right here. At age 13, 70% of kids quit.
Yeah.
So it's not a lie. I mean, there's information to back it up. And again, if your kid's the outlier, good for you. I'm glad you never had to deal with that. But we're talking to youth sports as a whole. And I think that's what these parents need to understand, is we're not just talking about their kid, it's a lot of kids.
I think I'm going to go off script here a little bit, but I think one of the toxic trends of youth sports or amateur sports right now, I do think that parents are getting misinformation. I'm trying to be tactful how to put this, from AAU programs, from travel programs, from club programs, in terms of that's their best way to develop. I think there are programs that do it the right way, but I think we talked about this, that if your kid is playing tournaments all the time and your kid has glaring weaknesses in their game, whether they need to work on their left hand, whether they need to get stronger, quicker. Playing tournaments is not going to help them develop. With the old adage, when we were growing up, there wasn't a lot of AAU. There wasn't a lot, but what we would say is, hey, you go play against older kids. Like you go down to a part of town where they're maybe tougher, maybe they've got better competition, and you would go play against older kids. That's how you get better. So when you went back and played against your age, it was like the game would slow down. And somehow I think that's where travel kind of got to. Like, oh, you got to play at a higher level because it's going to get you ready for your season. Because that's ultimately what you were trying to do is to get ready for your high school season. Yeah. And I don't think I see our kids. I don't think they're developing their games. I see our basketball players who have a lot of weaknesses and should just be in the gym working, just repetition, 1,000 shots a day. Maybe at night going and playing, at a gym against older kids or men and learned to play that way. But instead, they're traveling to all these tournaments. And great, I'm not against the AAU program, but they're not developing. They're just taking those bad habits against better competition, and those bad habits are just more exposed. And so I think it's a toxic environment because I think parents are paying so much money with the idea they think their kids, one, going to get exposure, which that's a whole nother discussion, but they think they're getting developed and they're not getting developed. If they bust their tail for a year, I tell people that all the time. Tell your kid to take off, not from their high school team or from the middle school team, take off from playing on a travel team for a year and do nothing but work. Go in the cages. Go kick 1,000 soccer balls in the net, then put yourself, then you're at the point where you can put yourself in a higher level travel situation. You'll be ready, but you're not ready. And all you're going to do is get frustrated. And all you're going to do is not develop any.
I'm down. For me, that's a great way to finish. I can't argue that. I completely agree with that in so many different areas. And, like you said, it's all play, and no development. And that's why we always talk about you want your kid to continue to develop and get better. But that last 2 minutes, man, that was great. That's the best thing you've ever actually said.
Ever in my life.
Now that I think about it, I'm like, you know what? We've been talking about cutting them, and I think he just earned his keep.
Yes. I thought I was going to be on the practice squad next week, but yeah, thank you.
Yeah, the last thing I would say, and I'm hesitant to say it now because I don't want to follow up that grandiose
awesome
statement, but I think the difference in sports today, and it can be good, but it also can be toxic, is that sports have become life. They've become a dominant part of life. And as we grew up in our era, sports were still, they were important, but they still were a part of life. And it's just getting worse and worse that we're allowing sports to dominate our life. So,
yeah, I agree. And you look at pro athletes that finish. Look at the ones that their sport was everything to them. Mm-hmm. They're struggling, a lot of them. Yeah. And then look at the ones that had good balance and it was just a part of what they did and they're thriving.
Yeah.
Or they're doing, I could tell you 1,000 examples. I think our kids are the same way.
Yeah.
They'll be that. So, I think there's so much please give us all the feedback from this because I'm really curious to hear. Like I said, even though I'm not great on social media, I do get on and read a lot of that stuff. And that's why I told you, like that one lady who was talking about her 8-year-old son, like, good for you. Like, I'm not arguing that. But at the same time, if majority of boys or girls that do that, it doesn't end like your son. And I'm glad it did. And I hope it continues. But I also know an example of a coach that I was talking to the other day, a softball coach, whose daughter got a scholarship, played her freshman year at college, and then quit. She was done at that point because she was like, it just finally got too much. Mm-hmm. So they might not burn out at 15, but she burned out at 19.
Yeah.
And so, again, you don't want that, you hope so, but please give us a feedback. This is great stuff, and we want to continue to be able to have dialogue on this, and we'll talk to you soon. Hey guys, Jeff Rancourt here. Thanks for checking out Pure Athlete. And subscribe to our channel on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you go to listen to our podcast.